Thank you all for being here. Um, it's really funny because actually this kind of was a catalyst out of the Coldplay situation that happened and thinking about leadership and how people make mistakes and all the ramifications and all the unintended consequences. And the fact that, we're at that time of year, every time this time of year, where people put themselves, be vulnerable, raise their hand to volunteer for leadership. So if you are someone that has ever volunteered for leadership, put a one in the chat. Tell me that. Um, because the thing is that when we get passionate and we care and we open ourselves up, a natural byproduct is that we are usually emotional and it means something. And so what I've learned, and I'm going to share a little bit today of some of the mistakes I've made on my own journey, some other things that I've learned on that journey. And then also, hopefully, I'm a big believer that, and why I was so passionate and thankful to Natalie for the opportunity to be part of leadership identification and development is because I love being someone and I love Women's Council being a place where we don't have to learn everything through the school of hard knocks. Like, my prayer is that if I can share my mistakes, if we can talk about other mistakes and we can brainstorm so that we can make better choices in the moments, that's amazing. And I think that is how leaders are made here. Nobody knows this stuff, but we learn and grow as we go through it. So I titled this Leading Through Disappointment, Growth, Grace, and Guardrails. And again, before we get started, just so I kind of see, do I see a chat? Oh, there's my chat. Put a two in here if you've ever raised your hand, stepped into the arena as Brene Brown talks about, and not had something go the way you wanted. Maybe you didn't get the position. Maybe you didn't get the committee assignment. Maybe you didn't get the outcome in a meeting that you wanted, right? Yeah. I can put two, 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 two. Sometimes we get to a stage where people think they see the outside, and an important part as women and in life is to remember that Facebook is not real life, right? Real life things happen, real disappointments happen, and our opportunity is to really get through those tough choices. So yeah, leadership looks shiny on the outside, but tell me I mean, I see a lot of experienced leaders here and people on that journey. Most of us could tell you that it is forged in that fire that no one sees, in the disappointment, in the conflict, in the tough choices. I recently was talking with someone, we were saying, I've learned more from my failures or things that didn't go right when I would really look at that and see how I could do better and what could I learn than when it goes right. And I've often said, like, this is one of my biggest things about ChatGPT, is I said the surprise for me was learning that it helped me with my weaknesses, which is where many of us hit our ceiling or fail. And so, when leaders stumble, we, even if it's not us, right? Like, this is the point I want to make. You may see someone in your network, in your association, in your company that something doesn't go right, and how they respond can change the trajectory if you're observant and go, wow, what did I learn? One example I'll just share on my journey. Last year, when I was running for Florida Realtor Secretary, um, the a candidate that was running was a woman and so dedicated and wanting to be perfect. And an association we went to had given questions. So both the candidates had like typed out their answers. I don't know if that's ever happened to you. It's actually the worst thing when you know the questions because you get mechanical and think you've got to give the perfect answer rather than speaking from the heart, right? So if you've ever done it, you really want to come from the heart. And I saw this person who I admire and is an amazing leader, and they were asking like, so tell me what why you want to run, and who are you, kinds of questions. And she started reading it, and the disconnect was like you could feel the whole room just go like, whoa. And so from that moment, I was very courageous, as hard as it was, to speak without notes as I went through it and realized that authentic beats perfection. But I think in this conversation today, trust is built in authenticity. And every single time when we can promote that and improve that, I think people hopefully will have grace. And what I would encourage each of you as you're on your journey as leaders is to also remember these things for others. And it is leadership is really what we become when things don't go as planned. That is really how many times have you been in a situation as a leader and something didn't go as planned and how it's changed or grown you? When it goes as planned, sometimes we put on that autopilot and we're like, oh, that went great. And maybe it did, maybe it didn't, but we didn't really aren't aware of the speed bump. And so if you're on this call and you don't know anything about what I'm talking about so far, bless your heart, because it's not a matter of when, it's a matter of I mean, it's not a matter of if, it is a matter of when. You will. And if at that time you want to call me and be like, Cyndee, it all makes sense now, I got you. So just realize that this is all part of the journey. Okay, Gamma, come on. Hold on. Um, so why does it matter? Because I think it's important, first of all, when your expectations are right, your responses are usually better. And so I think when we can know that leadership is not just the wins, it's not just, when you got the title, when you're in front, when everybody's cheering from you, and that the disappointment, the conflict, and the tough decisions, they are universal, they will happen. And so, really, when we say at Women's Council, leaders made here, what that really means to me is navigating the messy middle, right? It is learning to, when things go wrong, then what? And how do we show up with the heart, the humility, and courage to get through those? And why it matters right now and every year at this time more than ever is because we all are going to come into contact with or be part of governing boards getting elected, committee selections, project teams, the national LID lists and opportunities, and the state LID list and opportunities, and your network. And so I think, first of all, if you are a leader in any one of those roles, I would encourage you to have grace for the people, especially the newer they are on the journey. Sometimes the less prepared they are for the disappointment or the challenge. And so, how we reach out to people, support people, communicate about it is really important in my experience. So, let me just like take all that and say, when you raise your hand to be a leader, the number one thing that we have to realize is visibility is there. So, it nothing's off the record. Natalie and I were joking earlier before you guys got on that one of the biggest lessons that I have actually learned in this process is you need your ride or die friends, and you need a phone. That anything you put in writing, you need to just assume it's public and it's forever. I don't care. Like, so if you are going to fire off an email that's flaming, if you're going to like text something, honestly, you need to assume, how would I feel if that were on the, in front of all the members? How would I feel if this was on the front page of the paper? My first career was with IBM, and it was interesting because they always taught us that, I mean, at that time, corporate culture and the brand was strong. And anything that we did that discredited the company would be terms for being let go. So if I got a DUI, like I very likely would be let go. If I, got arrested for something, or if I was inappropriate in public, very likely. So it was a great company, loved working there, but there were two ways to not work there anymore. It would be to do something not right by the client and the customer, or to discredit the company and the brand. I think it's a really important thing that each of us needs to, for a moment, just stop and think about that when we step into leadership, we no longer just have our voice, Cyndee Haydon. And sometimes it's really hard because we don't quit being a person, and we don't quit being passionate, and we don't quit having an opinion. but how we say it, where we say it, what we say, is it in alignment with whatever organization we're representing is critical. And so I just am going to share with you when I talk about things being forever. This is a funny story. Back in 2000, as you can see for this newspaper article over here, I had been really active in Clearwater Beach, and they were in the process of trying to redevelop from a mom and pop kind of city to sell to developers and to build all this stuff. And I had gone to every city charrette, given my input. We got a new mayor. And I was very disappointed in the way that they were moving forward. I felt like I lived in the neighborhood, and I just felt like what we had been led to believe wasn't really happening. Now, you can see in the article here, I stated I was a 37-year-old college graduate, concerned citizen. Yeah, I was full of myself. And I wrote a very passionate, accurate letter to the editor. Now, for those of you that are young, you might have realized the newspaper was this thing that used to come to the driveway each day. You would read it, and then you'd either put it in the litter box or you'd throw it away. But it would go away. Like one day in the letter to the editor is gone. It's like, okay, said my piece, got it off my chest, it's gone. Except for the mayor, who never really was quite comfortable with me in a room again. But um, so what did I learn? Look at the other part of this. In 2005, the internet was growing, and the newspaper put all their archives online. So imagine my surprise when in 2005 I go into real estate. And when you would Google my name, the first thing you would see is this terse letter to the editor. Now, here's my thing. Would I still stand by it as true? Absolutely. Would I stand by it as, somebody says, um, like you can be right or you can be happy, right? Like I wouldn't today have used the same passion that I exuded in that letter to the editor. Looking back to the younger version of me, again, it was something that made future things awkward, and it was just really, again, would have been a great opportunity for me to call a neighbor, call a friend. Um, I say this to say, never in a million years that I expect this to be the first thing um, in my bio, in my search. When I've led a career of, I'd been a computer consultant with IBM, I've done a million things in the community, yada yada yada, and the first thing you see is basically unhappy, crazy citizen. So luckily, I had to really, really look hard to find it today because I've buried it with so much stuff. But I say that to say that was something I never expected to follow me the rest of my life. Okay. So when you put it in writing and when you put it out there, just know you cannot take it back. So, then let's talk about, that's one reality. So one part of this concept is, as we're going through this, whether you with your leadership team or you with other people, be really mindful of what you put in writing. Be really mindful of how you say it. And today we're blessed because we can go to ChatGPT, and I'll give you a little insider tip. I often use the word charge neutral when I need to just de-escalate my passions, because I'm like, Cyndee's a passionate woman and she starts going, and I put it at charge neutral when I'm trying to like present facts to an appraiser, or when I want to like de-escalate my passion on a topic that I want to communicate to someone to be heard. And really, because charge neutral is the ability to present information in a way that creates space for someone else to hear that. And again, as effective leaders, that's what we're doing. We're not winning. We're not trying to be over someone. We're trying to improve our communication and our connectedness to get our things done. Ah, where'd she go? Okay. All right. So just in case, like sometimes people look at it now and they go, "Hey, you made it to Secretary of the State. Like you probably had an easy path." So I just wanted to dispel and be really honest here. And for anybody that's ever had things not go your way, I'm going to share, probably a much more emotional story. I had to edit this slide several times because the little girl, Cyndee, in me, the one that still feels, wrote the time I got demoted. And words have power. And so I was like, so obviously, like 15 years later, I still feel the hurt and the heart ping of what happened. But I was serving on not my state, my association's executive committee. And we had a woman that was coming in to be president. And it had been a broker that I had worked for, and I had left due to some workplace inappropriate behavior by her to me. And so I had ground rules and boundaries that again, that I just had ground rules and boundaries. However, on that board, there were a lot of people that were not looking forward to working with her. There was a lot of energy towards that, and so the people on nominating and the CEO and everybody were like, you know, even though I had served a year with her and done my job well, it wasn't a good team. It wasn't a good fit. And the question was the dynamics in that room of having to get work done that year. They worried because um, I often carried influence and how that would impact the team. So basically, they asked me or offered me a director position to stay on the board, but I was not on executive committee. I got basically held back. Well, for someone who, again, many of you may relate, I was like, I did my job well, da 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 da, like why me, right? Like the issue is like, again, a lot of it about feelings like her. So I had to really, as a person, because I do want to grow and know that each thing can make me a better leader for that journey, and because this wasn't the last stop, hopefully, on the train, I took the director position. I can't even think of another time it's happened to someone. So I think that's part of why it felt so humiliating at the time, for me personally. And I took that year and forward. I did a Navy SEAL Fit leadership training. I got more involved with Leadership Pinellas and ultimately was the president of that association. I could have gotten mad and defensive. And really, the challenge to each of us, because this is the human little girl in us, little guy in us, that we have to decide to be humble enough and be willing to grow. So that year changed my leadership path. And just to give you some sense of it, the guy who got put in my position went on to be president, again, whatever that was, 2 or 3 years later, of the association. And he was done, because on this journey, many of you may know, and Carolyn, you may see that, and Becky at the national level, and that you often, as you start to rise, don't get a second chance to recover from mistakes. So many times we're so anxious, we're so eager, we want to get there fast, and our prayers should really be that we get there prepared. Because if you get there fast, even if you don't technically fail, in my experience, you may not have all the skills needed as a leader to handle the difficult situations and the conflict that involve the other people, other leaders, other things. It might not even be what you're doing, but as the leader, you have to lead and inspire everybody in your organization. So all that is to say that I went back on the next year, got on executive, and as they say, the rest is history. But I believe 100% I would not have had the things and the paths and the doors opened on my journey if I had not had people willing to hold me back, see potential, but to say, you've got some rough edges that it's better to like get them in line now and then soar, rather than us not have those conversations and not help you, and then you just are one and done. So that, again, is also sometimes when you're in the thick of it, really hard to see. But I'm a big believer in Garth Brooks' unanswered prayer song, right? We think we know the path, and sometimes that path is not the one we should be on. And sometimes if you have, good people supporting you in that mentorship, a better path will go. Let people help you grow. All right. So, it wouldn't be relevant if we didn't talk about cold cat play and the kiss cam. And, this is really to say nobody's asking us to be perfect, but they are asking us to show up with integrity, to be who we say we are, to be the same person in public that we are in private. That as leaders, if we are talking behind our team's back, if we are not living up to, we can't have a culture that is healthy and supportive if we're not living in integrity that way, in my opinion and experience. And so I think, part of what was important to remember is that leadership is not a perk. Leadership is actually that point in which you step in and you no longer are focused on I, and it's focused on them. And I was telling someone the other day, I'm still a mostly solo practitioner. Jack backs me up. I mean, we're a team, but I do a lot of the work. And you don't get to be successful in this business. We go out every day and you promote yourself to a seller, you promote yourself to this. We're running for positions and you've got to go out and sell yourself. And it's a very, part of this journey and the learning is straddling from being a good doer to being a good leader and inspiring. And that's a very different role. And so as we do it, like I said, the biggest thing that I would like to, kind of infuse today on this is we have to be, again, showing up for people and being who we are and having a culture that builds trust, that you have boundaries and that we also make people feel valued, where they are, not that they have to hide stuff or, be something different. So all of that's to say that leadership does come with emotional risk. I mean, I don't know anybody, well, let me just say, I do know people. There are some people that run just for the title, okay? But for the majority of people, they are passionate. They care about the organization, they care about the cause, they care about the work, they care about others. And it does, that caring by nature means it hurts more when things don't go right. I oftentimes find myself hurting, wanting the best for people. And when I see them say and do things that are self-sabotaging, it even hurts from the outside. But when I put myself out there and I don't get positions or I don't get something that I think I'm ready for or that I want, it equally hurts. I mean, that's just the human side of us. And as I said, disappointments are going to be inevitable. I've had the opportunity to chair two committees at NAR. And the first time we went for training, it was interesting because they said, you have a better chance of getting into Harvard than just statistically the numbers to get into an NAR committee. Much of that is similar with Women's Council National. We have so many amazing women across the country and leaders, and yet there's only so many positions. And so it doesn't mean just because you didn't get that position, you're not valued or, but it is still disappointing. And the other thing is to know that, you know, even when we're disappointed, even when things don't go our way, it does not give us permission to say and do things that don't represent the organization well and that hurt others in the process, right? And so, um, but we have to kind of be prepared for it. So, as you're going through this journey, again, I know we have people on here that are still at the networks and they're moving up, so they're maybe early in that path. Just know that, again, this is part of the process. And my best advice and what I have found is, building some dream buddies along the way that I can have a safe place to know that I can share what I'm really feeling, what I'm really doing. My feeling is you get 5 minutes to share your disappointment. If you're talking about it longer than that, it becomes a mindset that's not going to serve you, right? So there's a difference between a moment and a mindset. So nobody wants, somebody that's the whining, negative, Nelly mindset and that energy, but we all are going to have moments, and that's a real part of the journey. So here's what happens. Let's say we get to that disappointment. And so what do we do? And I think this is where I see people making mistakes that they and regrets they have later based on what they do in these moments. So, here's a question. When something happens, whether someone responds to your Facebook post in a way that you don't like, or whether you are running for an office and you don't get it, or whether something else goes wrong, do you react impulsively or do you reflect and think about it? And again, maybe you do the, you know, phone a friend and get that calm back, because most of the time, I think, put in the comments here because we got a lot of experienced leaders. Tell me, have you ever regretted taking a pause before you react? Like, have you ever regretted? Yeah. Natalie says no. Um, I love that. I'm glad you guys are enjoying it. Yeah, I mean, I think the thing here is that one of the things that social media does is it's just amplified that letter to the editor, right? And so many times throughout the days, we get in front of us things that we can choose to react to or reflect and engage with. I think it's a really important piece when stuff comes at us. I I tend to be, and if this is you, you might relate. I tend to be someone that's decisive and a problem solver. And so I actually have to bite my tongue maybe more than some of you do, because I'm like willing to like go and I'm like, ooh. So again, that's been part of my journey to learn to live in the pause. And I would really encourage you to consider that and just try it even and see what the outcome is. Do you get a better response? Does it give you time to put your thoughts together better? So the other thing that happens is like, okay, so one is how we're reacting in those situations. The next one is when it happens, like at a network and somebody's disappointed. And again, we're talking committees or elections, or maybe someone feels like stuff wasn't fair. Maybe someone felt like, these things, they didn't like the outcome. Maybe they thought, different things. We've all heard it. I mean, type in the comments what kind of, excuses or things that you hear, right? I mean, I've heard it all. The question is at that moment, and again, this is what's guided me. Um, I'm blessed with a family of origin that my parents are still married after 65 years. So, luckily that piece of my family of origin, I got a lot of benefit because I know that words matter and actions matter, and that for the long haul, it's worth considering those carefully. Um, on the flip side, if you know me, they didn't ever speak out loud to say I love you or yell, but it made it very hard to share my story. So we all come with something. So if you came from the screaming family, just understand you probably express your story and emotions better than I do. Now we just have to figure out how do we not burn down the house and ruin the foundation in the process. And we need everybody, but it's like how do we soften those edges? So um I think one of the things we have to always remember, and as a leader in particular, where you are on that journey, is sometimes it helps me to think about the people I'm involved with like I would a husband or a parent or a child. You know, would you say something or do something so thoughtlessly that it damages who they believe they are and the relationship that you're able to have, right? Does that resonate with anybody? Yeah, I like that, Gina. Never get it pausing. I'm looking at the comments here. Yeah. I I think this is the one of the things, and let me just share here, right? In marriages, you'll have people fly off the handle and say something about, I might get divorced. In business and in organizations, we can see people get emotional and say something like, I resign, I quit, whatever. Most of the time, the people I've known that took that path will tell me later they regretted it, right? It was their emotions got the better side of them. But let's talk about that. When you say something that damages another person, that is one thing. But think about when you say something that damages or reflects poorly on the organization, that's escalating to a complete level, right? I mean, I, as Cyndee Haydon, could be disappointed, could be mad, could be whatever, and share my feelings, right? That's a lot of free therapy that I had to pay a lot of money for. I'm entitled to my feelings, you're entitled to your feelings. Like we don't have to make right or wrong. We can own that. Here's the thing. When I say something about negatively about IBM, about Florida Realtors, about Women's Council, I have now changed the whole playing field. As a leader, that's unacceptable. As a leader, just like when I was at IBM and they said, if you bring discredit on the organization, you need to go. Like you cannot be the face of an organization and represent it poorly. And it is a big responsibility, right? We've talked about it up to this point, but the reality is that is what it means. And every day today, you might think like being a Florida Realtor secretary, you think, whoo, I actually I actually get more nervous at times posting because I know that even though I'm saying it, there's a piece of it that everybody will assume that Florida Realtors believes that or thinks that. And that's a lot of responsibility, but isn't that the definition of a leader? That we shouldn't be in a position to have that if we haven't had the discernment to learn how to put that organization first, to put that reputation first, and make sure that publicly we are building up and strengthening a foundation, not tearing it down. And that's again Cyndee Haydon's feelings, but curious, about yours in the process. So, again, it really, all of us are humans and we have feelings, not only us, what we're feeling, but the person on the other side. And I think the biggest thing that helps if you're trying to minimize this in your network or on your journey is transparency. Because I feel like transparency or lack of transparency is the fuel on the fire that makes it flame. If people feel like they're not getting a fair shake, processes aren't being done fairly, someone's talking behind their back, people aren't, saying what they said they would do, the rules aren't the same for everybody, that is like fuel for the fire, and rightfully so. Because honestly, as leaders and as a culture of trust, people have to feel safe. And in that safety, they have to feel like everybody is treated with respect and kindness. So those are three things that I can just, like I said, not if, it's just when in this process. So as we talked about, why does it matter and why, and am I glad you're here? Is because really first, just in a moment of gratitude, be thankful where you are for the opportunity to get as prepared and learn as much as possible before the next opportunities come up, whether it is in your business, in your volunteer life, in your marriage. There's limited second chances. And even if there is a second chance, you often bring the baggage of the mistakes of the first. So make them, like a ship, right the ship so that you'll have smooth sailing going forward. I think one of the most underappreciated things I've experienced on my journey is that people don't realize how valuable feedback is, and yet people will only give you feedback if it doesn't jeopardize the relationship. And as leaders, we have to remember that it's hard for people to take it as much as for us to receive it. But if we can, have a culture where people aren't defensive, where they know we mean the best for them, we want the best for them, we're on their team and supporting their journey forward. And yet, feedback is how we're going to find out what our weaknesses are. We're going to find out what are those Achilles heels, those rough edges that we're bumping up against that are keeping us from being the person that goes forward, whether it's again by someone's appointment or by running an election. At the end of the day, it's what do people feel and think and see in us. And really, all of us are growing by the people around us and by what the feedback and the constructive criticism that we're willing to take in. Someone who's a life learner, I value it. People will ask me. I do think that if you're on a network and with working with other people on your team, first of all, check yourself. Are you really giving feedback or are you just finding a way to criticize someone? And I want to say that first because your intention and your heart comes through, right? Are you really trying to like give somebody something in love? Or are you trying to go back to that last slide and hurt somebody and be like, well, if you were more organized, like that's not really feedback. That's not feedback. Feedback might be, hey, Cyndee, you tend to rattle on and it's more impactful when it's concise, and the further you go you're going to have a less amount of time to speak. So if you like worked on that, you'd be more impactful, in the process. If it was coming from someone I respected like Maria, I would be like, thank you, I hear that, right? If again someone that I know has been gossiping and tearing me down and doing whatever, and then they want to go and you rattle on forever at a meeting, I'm not really feeling like that's great feedback, just to tell you the difference, right? And how it's received. So realize how you say it, where you say it. In addition, if you really do have something to help somebody improve, many times just because our ego and our feelings, it's better to have that one-on-one conversation, have it offline. You don't want to shame anybody. This isn't about, again, somehow making you more important than somebody else. If you're truly trying to help someone, give them the courtesy of having those conversations in a private setting and be supportive of them. And as you see them improve, acknowledge them. I've had a lot of mentors on my journey, and I've said thank you to every one of them every time I get the chance. And what they've said to me, and I'm starting to experience it myself as I try to, offer other people assistance and support on that journey is, you know, many people are not open. And that's really, in most instances, a sign of insecurity. They're not open to hearing anything that they could improve upon. So if you're someone that really cares about someone and you want to help them, one thing you might consider is saying, you know, would it be okay to give you some feedback? They may say yes, but I'm not really up for it right now, right? They just lost the election. They're emotional. They just first need to have that girlfriend or boy, pal chat that just gets the emotion out and just feel the disappointment settled. And then later, maybe in a different day, you revisit it and be like, absolutely, let's revisit it. But I do think, just like we do with our clients, giving people permission to reject. Hey, would you be okay if I shared something I think, might help in your leadership journey? If they're not, respect that too. Like, if you can't help somebody that doesn't want to be helped. Um, but I would say every step of the way, be teachable, be open to coaching. Every single day, I ask sincerely with the people around me, how can I get better? And every day I think I get a little better. I work on it. I work hard on it. And so because I really do want to bring my best, some days I think about being president of Florida Realtors. And I look at someone like Tim Weishire, who's such a great speaker and he's such a good businessman. And I think, whew, will I be ready for all that it demands and calls, right? Will be different, but what I can do is every day bring my best in that journey to deliver the best that I'm capable of to the people. So just again, a few things that are tips that you can consider, and I'll be happy to give the slide presentation to Natalie that she can send out with the recording or post it. I would say a mentor is invaluable, but even if it's not a mentor, it's a peer, someone you trust just to tell you the truth and just know that you can receive it. It doesn't mean like people can't fix you. People can't fix me. I have to fix me, but I can't fix my blind spots. I can't fix what I don't know, and sometimes we don't know. And sometimes someone can hear us how we are in a meeting or what we do, and you're like, uh I'll tell you, one of my mentors is Ann DeFries, and she's a past president of National Women's Council. And when we first started working and I would be applying for positions or doing stuff, I would fill out everything and then I would ask her to review it and give me her honest feedback because she would care enough to really do that. And inevitably in the beginning, she'd be like, There are too many I's in this description. Get rid of all, because the way it's received is I. Even though, again, in our business life or in other things, it might be what we're doing as we're selling ourselves to a client. When we step and we're moving into those positions on a team, our language needs to be about the team and about them and about what we can do for others. So it's great to have someone that's been there that knew my heart. She knew exactly, and she'd seen me work. It wasn't like that she thought I was selfish, but she was like, the way you're presenting this is not going to resonate with people. And it sounds more about you than about how do you serve. So it's great to have someone like that. Um, Also realized that one of the things I've learned since COVID in particular, it's given me a ton of empathy for others. And one of the biggest things I've learned is that everybody is going through something that we know nothing about. Um, February, in the beginning of my campaign for Florida Realtor Secretary, my husband was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. And I went to resign, and he said, absolutely not. And part of it was he felt like that was a death sentence for him. And long and short of it is, I ran that race knowing that every day he and I were in charge of the choices we would make in our lives, but I didn't have to make it early, but I also kept it to myself, and there was a lot going on. And so if there was a day that maybe I didn't seem like myself, people didn't know. I would submit to you that there are people all around you going through things that you have no idea about, whether it's divorce, whether it's financial problems, whether it's kids, whether it's their own health. So, that's the grace part of this is that honestly, if we could just be a little kinder as we see people, and even if they act in not their best light, pause and think, you know what? There might be a lot going on with that person. And I just need to pause too and not make rash decisions and not act rashly, right? And sometimes it's just in those quiet spaces that we can say, hey, you know what? Seems like a lot's going on here. Do you want to talk? And just expect the best in people. Um, and if it's you personally, you know, you have a decision. Like, do you choose growth or do you choose ego? I'll tell you that the people around me that I admire the most are the ones growing, the ones that are willing to say, like, I'm doing the best I can with what I know. And I have a saying that I fail forward. That is how I run my business. I'm early adopter, but I fail forward and learn. If you're going to do it and fail and do nothing with it, that's just irresponsible. But if you're willing to like take a risk, give your best, not have it go right, and then learn from it and get back up and do it again, that's what leaders do. And that's what growth is. So, we talked about this a little earlier, but it bears repeating. You are not carrying a title. I mean, you've got to live and care out the mission of whatever organization you're a leader for and represent. This is so far beyond yourself, and words matter. And how you communicate, especially during people's disappointment, is going to either strengthen it or you're going to erode the trust. And your behavior is going to set the tone. We had something happen with someone I care about in Florida recently, and um, so we made some changes. Again, some public comments. Can't have a leader in that respect. We had an honest conversation, and we could say, I can love the person and acknowledge that that action can disqualify you from holding the role that you hold. It doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't mean I'm not your friend. It doesn't even mean I won't support you and maybe there's something around the corner. But it does mean that when you're in that leadership position, you are held to a much higher standard. Like it or not, that is the fact. And we have to always think first about the organization we represent and how we're reflecting. And if we can't do that, if we say and do things that bring discredit on an organization, then we should expect that organization to take action to safeguard it for the members overall. As painful as it is, and even when it's your friend, and even when it's hard. And that's when it's tough being a leader, because it'd be so nice to have said, I wish you hadn't done that and had to make this tough for all of us. Like, I love you, I care about you, but I can't, just like your kids, they're going to make certain decisions. It's like your kid walks into a store, they steal something, and you have an opportunity. Don't be like, you're my kid. I don't want to get, like, go ahead. I don't want to say anything about it. No, you have to go, like, that's not right. You got to return it. And here's how we do it. I love you, and I'm going to keep loving you through it. And this little mistake, luckily, you didn't end up in jail because later in life you would. But this is a teachable moment. And sometimes I think the mistake we make is forgetting that every leader, every single person you see on this screen, every single person you know, state, local, national, we are all humans learning too, and we make mistakes. And the mistake doesn't make us unlovable or unfriendable or unlikable, but it might disqualify us from roles and opportunities that we're in or would have in the future. And that's what I see happen a lot of times after we have our elections and we see things and people post things on Facebook in publicly. And I can tell you that, as chair of leadership identification and development, and all the people from our state that we got to see their applications, there were people on that list that we had the opportunity to remove to recommend to national. As a team, we looked at social media. If there are things where people are bringing negative light and negative comments and negative things, is that who we want to put Florida's face on and put the national face on? And I'm not saying you have to be perfect. I'm not saying you have to agree with everything, but how you say it is part of the lesson of leadership. So, our promise as leaders, and if you haven't made it, I would encourage you to think about it, right? This isn't written anywhere. This is Cyndee Haydon's School of Hard Knocks. But things that I find that work is handle those conflicts privately. Don't shame people ever. First of all, everybody that's in an organization, nobody asks for a second job or like a second bully or a second mean boss. So we are here because we want to be, we care, and we hope people care about us. If we're not doing something right, then it should be discussed privately, not shamed. We should communicate with courage and care. They always keep in mind kindness and respect, and that we should try to also uplift people in what they do well. Like, none of us has all strengths. So if you're going to take the time to tell me how I could be better in an area, please try to take the time to help me know what I'm doing well is also, and help build that confidence and keep the mission bigger than the moments. And I can't say it enough. As a leadership skill, I think that's overlooked. It's grace. And grace does not remove accountability, but it means just what I said. I can know somebody that I care about, that's my friend, that I've worked with, that makes mistakes, and I'm still going to be their friend unless, something else personally for me. But my point is, a mistake doesn't make you anything other than someone that learned, but it might mean that, again, right now, where you are and how you're acting may not make you the right fit for that job. And I think one of the things that is so important to remember is kindness is not a weakness. It truly is wisdom in action. You'll never regret being too kind if you're authentic and nice and still holding people accountable. So I would submit to you that in leadership, grace is not optional. It is the oxygen. And what I will see in organizations and places that are struggling with their culture, I believe it often comes from more judgment than grace. And it's not uncommon. I grew up in a family that were very high achievers, and it was always, what have you done for me lately? What have you done for me lately? And we get in that mindset where we hold ourselves to a high standard. I hold myself to a high standard. And one of my life leadership lessons is to give people grace, that not everybody is going to maybe do things the way I would. That doesn't make it wrong. And that doesn't, maybe I learned something from them, right? Maybe I'm not so quick to judge. Maybe I just, as a leader, have to learn and go, like, what am I not seeing? What can I learn in this? But grace is going to give you that pause that you need. So again, here's a set of 5 questions that you can help yourself as a tool as you're going through it, which is, what are you really feeling? Does this even deserve a response? How is it serving? Have you actually reached out to someone you trust to kind of talk it over with first? It's a big one. Will it build or break trust? Trust is the currency. Trust is what matters in today's world. Um, and then finally ask yourself, like when you're thinking about it, like, what do you want to be remembered for? Meaning, is this going to further it? Is this who you are? Sometimes we get dragged into other people's stuff, which is why I protect my energy so much. And we have to not let them change our energy and our vision. Someone disruptive oftentimes can bring that energy. And sometimes we have to, separate out that energy and bring it back to where we are as a group. We still have to deal with it. So, what I will share with you, and if any of you can like feel this deeply that have had a disappointment, that is going to be the hardest time to just show up with the courage and the integrity of who you are. And yet, people will tell you, and it is true, that people will look more at how you react and respond when things don't go right than all the wins you ever have, all the successes you ever have. In that moment, they will change or remember that perception. And so it's in this period, in this season, in this time of year where leaders are made here. And the truth is, we're in the messy middle. It's hard. And anybody that tells you differently is not really in touch with their feelings because we all like to have our hopes and dreams and aspirations work out, but it doesn't always happen. So we've got a few minutes. I'll turn it on and we can talk and share anything. I just really want you to remember on this journey that you are not expected to be perfect. Women, the Harvard study says we wait to be 100% prepared before we raise our hand, which is part of why I think we're so many emotions in that, putting ourselves in that vulnerability. Men, it's at 60%. They're like, let me try, let me try, let me try. And for the men in the group, God bless you. We're working to be more like that. But remember, we aren't expect to be perfect. We get to learn it too. And so just give yourself and others the grace. And I'm going to finally tell you that my favorite book up until this one was The Speed of Trust by Stephen Covey. But this is an amazing book. If you as a person on your journey want to learn some more, trust and inspire how truly great leaders unleash graceness in others. It is about the fact that we no longer live in a command and control environment that many of us over, the age of 50 grew up in. It is now about inspiring others. In most cases, nobody has to belong to any of the organizations we're in, right? We want to inspire them to be involved and bring their best. And how we do that is by building cultures of trust and being leaders who inspire. And so, hopefully, some of that resonated. Hopefully, knowing that you're not alone, and even people that, have achieved some things had many of the bumps on the road that we've had to navigate ourselves as well with the support of friends like you. And again, I just again am looking to be still human and just get smarter every day with all of you. So I'll stop sharing and say thank you. And yeah, tell me your biggest takeaway in the chat, and you can feel free to unmute yourself. We got a few minutes here. Any thoughts, questions?
Cyndee, this is Dewana from Missouri City, Texas, the Texas Network, District Vice
Hey.
President. And I want to say this information, like I put in the chat, is well needed. I wish we would have had this type of information earlier this year. Because we've had some disappointments in our
Yeah.
Texas network, and I wish we would have had this information because I think other people would have walked away with a different. A different feeling, a different aspect, a different way that we could have handled certain things in Texas. But this information is well needed. I've been taking notes and pictures, and I know you're going to share it, but this is something that we can definitely take back to our networks in
Thank
Texas.
you.
Thank you so much.
Well, I would love, and Carolyn's here, but I mean, I would love to share this once a year because actually our CEO at Florida has said, hey, associations need this. They have the same situation. And we want our best people not to have an election or have a situation and lose them because they didn't win. Only one person can win, but that doesn't mean we don't need the whole team and grow people for other stuff. So thank you, Dwan, for being here and sharing that. Thank you. Anybody else?
I'll talk. Hi, Angel Decker from Flagler here in Florida. Honestly, there wasn't anything that I wouldn't didn't take away from this. Everything was very helpful, and it really reminds us or myself that, to give myself grace too. I mean, we definitely need to give grace to others, but giving ourselves grace, if we can give ourselves grace in situations that we don't take the moment to pause typically to think about, we can't give others grace. So starting to give ourselves grace first, especially in disappointment or in moments that we feel hurt, frustrated, upset, any sort of emotion except for happy. Um, if we can work on that first, then we can be able to see that need in others as well. So this was
Absolutely.
amazing. Thank you.
Thank you. So well said. Catherine Sakis.
Hello, good morning.
Good
I
morning.
have a unfair advantage because I get to talk to Cyndee about this kind of stuff all the time. We're two little nerds that talk about this instead of clothes and shoes and shopping. But anyway, all good. Um, we so often focus on conflict resolution and problems, and what you focus on manifests itself. So if you take a breath and you take the lessons from a presentation like this and learn about grace and giving grace and also receiving grace, it's important to receive grace and forgive yourself. But if we all learn to behave a little better and play nice in the sandbox, we're done with conflicts. So, right there, that whole concept of making sort of the preemptive strike at problems, I think is so valuable. And I hope all of you that get a copy of this share it. I'd love to see our networks have watch parties. And as a network, watch this
Yeah.
together, or governing boards um in their leadership summits, you know. And a lot of the lessons are easy and a lot are hard, and they take a lot of time. It takes a lot of time to learn to shut your mouth and count to 10, but you'll see the value in it. So I just want to thank Cyndee for putting it all together in such a great format. And if I were you, I'd get those watch parties together.
Thank you, Catherine. And I would encourage all of us. The biggest thing I think we can do is transparency. So I think that sometimes we, as a volunteer organization, we do all the work in Women's Council, right? There's no staff. We're doing, it's all we can do to do it. And sometimes like having consistency, I had a comment. I mean, I'm on the credentialing committee this year, and just we talked about that we want things to feel fair. They are fair, but the question becomes, as we know in life, how do people feel? Do they feel like it was fair? Did everybody get the same number of time? Did everybody get the same information at the same time? Did everybody get and that's another just simple tweak that I've really seen in our networks and in our associations is sometimes it's not that there's any ulterior motive. It's just that a lot of stuff gets passed by tradition, and someone tells someone, Angel tells the next person, and then someone remembers. It's like the telephone thing. And so I know Catherine's doing a lot of work with like standard operating procedures and spelling that stuff out. But I will tell you that being able to set expectations is more than half the battle in all of this, right? If people know what's going to happen, if people know what to expect, and if people feel like everything is fair, um, then then there's less emotion in my experience. Then they look at, okay, well, what could I learn, or what skills do I need to do to be better next year, whatever. But when you feel like it's not fair, that is really gasoline in a situation, and sometimes I've seen that be the spark that causes a whole forest fire that never needed to happen, right? So just that's one little tip I would have in that process. Anybody else before I know we're at the end of our time here at 104, and we were going to be an hour, but thank you all for investing in yourselves and taking time. And if I can ever be a resource to you or someone to like bounce stuff off of, I'm certainly happy. Again, I have a passion for the human part of this, and all of us getting smarter together. And if any of you want to jump in and continue joining those of us that are doing that over in the throw in a little AI group, I'd love to see you there. Otherwise, I look forward to seeing most of you at our convention coming up around the corner in August. And like I said, thank you all. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much, Cyndee. This was awesome, amazing, and very much needed. I think for anybody who's in leadership or contemplating leadership. And as Catherine said, they definitely need to be doing watch parties. So So we will have a video out available for you all in just a few days on our link tree. So it's Linktree WCR Florida. If you take a look there periodically, you should see it no later than Friday. It'll be up, and we'll try to include that slide deck if Cyndee's schedule permits her to get that to us.
You know what? I realized that I did it in Gamma. I can just send you a link and you could share it. So you don't even have to worry about getting that PDF up and down. So if you write it in the description, that'll be there. That'll be awesome, probably. An easy way.
Oh, perfect.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
Cyndee, this is Michelle Holcomb. I have to ask you just a quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
When you were screen sharing with us, was there that many tabs open on the top of your computer?
Yeah, there are. Stop it. Are you judging? Michelle, are you
No,
judging? I'm not
I am
feeling,
not.
I'm
I'm
not
just
feeling I'm in a
asking.
safe space here. I'm not feeling I'm in a safe space.
I just am wondering if your computer's running a little slow with that many windows
Yeah,
open.
it probably is. It probably is. But I'm over here pounding out the AI, the clients, the Women's Council, the Florida Realtors. Girl. Yes.
Oh, girl, I was like, oh.
I know. I have a young son, like in his 20s, and he comes in there. He just he shakes his head. And my husband, they're both like, close all that. I'm like, no, I'm.
You don't want to lose the pages.
Mm-mm,
I
mm-mm.
got it. I get it.
Yep.
Why
That's
did
why
Garrett just throw me under the bus? And I threw myself under the bus as well. So don't
Yeah.
worry. Those of us we got this. Our
Yeah.
browsers are just fine, ma'am.
Judge me by
Perfect.
the output, not by the browser tabs.
That's right. That's right. You do a wonderful job. Keep tabbing. Keep those tabs open.
Oh,
It's like my
all
brain.
right.
I used to
Well,
get
you guys-
reprimanded for all the
Yeah.
stuff I had on my desktop because it was like, why do you have so much on your desktop? It slows down. I said, if it's not there, it gets forgotten.
Mhm.
Hey, and I'm
Thank
gonna
you,
leave-
ladies, so much.
And I'll leave one final tip. Like if you're with people and they find it hard to have the conversations, maybe a handwritten note or just something positive to like open that space, because sometimes again, a lot of that can be just hard and there needs to be a gateway. So that's just one thing that you can do in your networks and stuff that sometimes helps people just feel your intentions a little better, not in the spur of the moment with all the emotions, gives them space to process. All right. Love you guys. Thanks for letting me be with you. And I will get to see you soon in August, most of you. And I'll talk to you soon. Oh, yeah. And Lila, it is my Facebook. It is look for Still Human, Just Smarter. Come join us. Everyone.